think I'm live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the PT on Ice daily show. My name is Jessica Davis, and I am lead faculty for the Performing Arts Division. And happy Tuesday. It's Clinic Tuesday, so we're going to talk about stuff in the clinic. And as I'm the Performing Arts faculty, we're going to talk about today how to know when your patient is ready for pointe. So this is applicable right now. So we have a lot of dancers who have been out of the studio. I know I have several patients of mine that are trying. Hi, everybody. Oh, look how everybody's here. Hello. So I've had a lot of patients who are returning to me, getting ready to going back to actual class. They've been taking some live classes at home, but one of the issues that they're running into is the intensity with which that they were dancing at home is nowhere near reproducible of the intensity of actually the classroom. So getting back, so this is going to be something that would be important that when you get a client, when they come to you, even if they're already on pointe, I think these are good tests and measures and criteria to assess quickly and to see, is this dancer ready to be on pointe right now? So what is some of the traditional criteria that has been used historically? So if you look at most ballet companies right now, the traditional criteria is age. So is the dancer 12? So a lot of them will look between 9 to 12 and assess, okay, so you're at this age, you're going to get your pointe shoes. So you might see a patient that will come to you, they're really excited, they're 10, they tell you, I'm getting my pointe shoes. And after you hear me today, I'm hoping that you will take a little bit of caution there and think about, well, is this patient ready? So age is one, and in fact, 96% of schools right now, that is the primary and only criteria that they look at is age. Second is years of dance training. So if they're a novice, then the dance studio may not put this dancer on pointe, even if they're at the age of 12. But if they've had several years of dance training, it might be considered at that point. And then ankle plantar flexion range of motion. So there's something called the pencil test, and I'm going to show it to you. So I'm going to demonstrate today, and for those of you who end up listening to this on the podcast, you might want to look back for some of these. So the pencil test is, as it sounds, you're just taking, well, I have a pen, but it's a pencil, and you have the dancer point their foot. So I'm going to point my foot, and then you're looking, if you put that pencil, can you get it completely straight on their ankle? Okay, so if you get that, and I'm going to show you, so that's a pencil test, and that's what you want to see. So if you have that amount of plantar flexion, then it's considered that you could go on pointe. So what is some of the issues? What are some of the issues with these criteria? Well, there are several. First of all, when you look at ankle plantar flexion range of motion, let's say that's your only criteria you're looking at. Well, what happens is, if you look at this population, you have some of them and many of them that end up being hypermobile, right? They will obviously have adequate plantar flexion range of motion. The problem is, oftentimes they have too much. So the dancer who is hypermobile has that amount of plantar flexion, they get their pointe shoes, and the problem is, that's all they've got. So they're growing at this stage, and what happens when we have adolescents who are growing is they don't have adequate neuromuscular control and strength. We know that. Then you take this dancer who's also hypermobile, you put them on their pointe shoes, and there's some problems that arise. So that criteria alone isn't sufficient. And in fact, it should be cautioned if a patient has too much plantar flexion. They actually are discouraged, if you look at the criteria, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, you should actually delay that dancer. So it's the opposite. You should actually delay them a little bit and make sure they have adequate strength and motor control. So some of the problems that arise if a dancer gets on pointe too soon. So one of the common things that we think of is, well, we're going to see some changes actually skeletally. It's going to affect their bone. So if you look at the studies, actually we're not finding that, so it's not so much that we worry, and you would think that it would affect their bone growth, but it's not so much that we are concerned about. It's actually if the dancer doesn't have range of motion, strength, and stability. So what happens is, if these dancers don't have those factors, then they will have problems up the kinetic chain. So you see that these dancers start to have issues in their knees, issues in their hips and spine, and that leads to problems that will affect their longevity of their career. So you can have injuries that are sustaining and problematic for the future. So to get up on point, so to fully get into that full on point position, a lot of dancers who don't have the strength are going to come up with other strategies, right? So they're gonna, hyperextend their lumbar spine. They may not ever achieve full knee extension, and they may not have proper gluteal activation. So this will obviously, if you can imagine, create issues, especially as the choreography gets more intense. So one of the things that these dancers are going to be doing at this stage in their development is they're also going to be increasing the intensity of their dance training. So now you've thrown them on point shoes, so they have extra classes for point, and they also have more difficult choreography and extra hours of dance. So you add all of that up, and they're growing, and they don't have adequate strength or proper neuromuscular control. So there's a lot of things that you have to assess. So who are the dancers that are at risk? Who are the dancers that when you see them, you need to think and do like an extra assessment? Hypermobile ones, right? So if they're hypermobile, a little caution there. We know that just in general with our patients, right? So hypermobile, hypomobile. So if the dancer doesn't have adequate mobility to even get on point, guess what? They're going to come up with other strategies to do so. The other thing, some of these dancers, when they're thrown on point too soon, and actually they found they can have some psychological concerns that will develop. So they're going to not be able to keep up in class. So they're struggling just to get on point. And then when they're trying to do the choreography, they can't. And when they're at their peak, they're trying to work on their technique, they can't, because they're just struggling to get onto that full point position. So it actually will affect their confidence. It will affect how they feel in class. And so we don't want that. So what do we do? What do we look for? What are some of the easy tests? So these are wonderful tests. So first and foremost, calf endurance. Okay, so we did a little thing, Australian Ballet Company had all of their dancers actually not stretch their calves, but focus on calf endurance. And dancers lack calf endurance, surprisingly. So have them just do straight leg raise. The good old-fashioned manual muscle testing, when you did the 30 calf raises. Can they really do that? And what you want to look for is, can they get fully on point, right? So, or into that demi-point position. Can they really get up and maintain that and come down, keeping their knee extended, keeping their glute activated, and maintaining proper trunk control? You want to see all of those, and you want to see that they can do that 30 times. Okay, so easy test. Secondly, there's something called the topple test. So the topple test, if you look at this test, so basically I'm going to demonstrate it so you guys can see, but it's basically a single pirouette en dehors, and ballet terminology is in French, so if you say that to them, single pirouette en dehors, they're going to be impressed that you said that. What you want, the criteria to pass, is they have to do this once. They have to do it perfectly. So what is perfect? So perfect is they get in a full releve position, so they're not off of that slightly. Their knee is fully extended, so they're keeping that knee fully extended. They're maintaining that proper glute control. Their trunk is not deviating side to side. They're able to execute the pirouette and land perfectly. So I'm going to show you what that looks like so you guys can watch me do a pirouette. Now, I haven't danced in a really long time, so forgive me my technique, but I want you guys to see. Okay, so this is what the topple test looks like. So they start, and you're looking even how they start, right? Are they keeping their trunk control? Do they have adequate dorsiflexion here, right? Are they using the proper form? And then they're going to do a pirouette and land. Now my landing was kind of not the ideal. I'll try one more time. And land. Okay, so you can see I actually deviated slightly, and I also struggled with my landing, so I wouldn't pass that test. So that's called the topple test. So you want them to pass that once. Easy test. How long did that take? Not long. The second thing is called the airplane test. So this is considered one of the most sensitive tests in determining, does the patient have adequate neuromuscular control? So what do they have to do? They have to perform this test 5 times, and the criteria is they have to pass it 4 out of the 5. So they can mess up once. You want them to demonstrate this 5 times. And what are you looking for? So you're looking for, and I'm going to show you what it looks like again. You're looking for that patient to have proper control. They're able to maintain the position, and it's sort of a modified arabesque. It's in parallel. And you have the patient bend down and almost kind of like so they're doing like a bending down, touching their foot and coming back up and maintaining control. So look at their knee. Does their knee, and you're going to see me, I'm going to fail this because I go into a little bit of valgus because I'm not recruiting my hip apparently. So anyway, you're going to see that you get a little bit of a valgus. You don't want that. That's a fail. Are they able to maintain a good neutral foot positioning? So do they overpronate in that supporting stance leg? So watch the foot. Are they gripping? So this is another little hidden thing that you're going to see in dancers that have underlying poor neuromuscular controls. They're going to do the claw toe, and you'll see I do that. So they're going to claw their toes. So you want to see, can they keep their feet spread? Can they maintain that arch? Can they keep their knee over their toe without going into a valgus position? Do they lose, do they get almost into like a Trendelenburg? Do they lose that trunk control to maintain? 4 out of the 5 have to be a pass. So here's the airplane test for you guys to see me. Okay, so it's just a parallel position, right, in an arabesque, and what you're going to do is just bend down, and they have to properly touch their toe and come back up. So again, down, touch their toe, and come back. And if you looked, I'm going to actually lower this one more time so you guys can see my foot for some of you. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, so foot, you can see with this one, as I go down, my knee positioning isn't too terrible, but I'm in a little bit of valgus, but look what I do, I grip my toes a lot. And that, again, is something, just a little secret tip. Pay attention to that. If you see that they grip, that can lead to problems. And that could be a whole nother discussion, but that can lead to some issues that we'll see later on. Okay, so that's the airplane test. Third, single sotae test. So what is that? It's basically just jumping in a parallel position, and you have the patient, and I'll demonstrate it again, you have the patient do this parallel, so they're not in turnout, which makes them uncomfortable because most of their world is in turnout. You're not allowing them to use their arms, so they fold their arms across their body, and you want them to jump 16 consecutive times. So obviously you're going to test right and left with all of these tests. So 16 consecutive jumps. What are the criteria to pass, right? So they have to pass 8 out of the 16. So they've got a 50-50, right? So 8 out of the 16 have to be executed perfectly. What is perfect? So perfect is adequate dorsiflexion in the beginning. Can they get in that proper position to ready to explode and take off and have the power? When they get in the air on layer, they need to have the knee, the supporting leg, fully extended. It can't be bent a little bit. They have to get into a full point position in the air. And again, their trunk can't be deviating. Then the landing. As they land, what you want is for, again, you're looking for a couple things. Trunk, right? Does that knee go into a little bit of valgus as they land, right? Do they bend over here? And if the knee gets into valgus, and then what's happening at the foot? This is key. So when they get down into that landing position, you're looking for that proper, we call it toe ball heel. So the toes land first, followed by the midfoot, and then they get their heel fully down. So you'll see this maybe executed perfectly once, but what happens, because some of them lack that endurance, and is that as they get tired, they're going to start cheating and they won't land with their heel fully down. If you see that, again, that's a red flag. Look for toe clawing. So I'm going to show you. So this is the single leg sotae test, okay? So what they do is you're just standing, kind of back up a little bit, there we go. Okay, so crossing the arms here, right? And then I'm going to bend and I'm just going to come up and I'm going to start jumping. So up like that. You can see I'm not that great. This is hard for me. I'll try it on the other side so we'll see if I'm any better. Okay, so 16 times. I'm not going to do it 16 times because I'll be out of breath and I won't be able to talk to you. Okay, so in review, those 3 tests are very helpful. So what do you have? You've got the topple test, you've got the airplane test, you've got the single leg sotae test. In addition, I want all of you to do calf raises. 30. Can they do 30 perfectly, right? Look at their plantar flexion range of motion. Yes, that's important. Caution if you see too much, right? Because the patient may have some underlying hypermobility. Okay, so the International Association of Dance Medicine Science has very specific guidelines, and I'm just going to read them off because it's great to tell your dancer. Because here's the thing. Dancers get really excited about when they're going to get their pointe shoes, and they also are not going to like you very much if they got them and you're going to take them off. However, I want you to know this data, and you can tell them, because what you don't want to see is that they start to get some type of injury and they can't dance, right? So keep your dancers dancing, right? For the long haul, right? You are their advocate. So number one, not before the age of 12. Unacceptable. If you get a dancer that comes to you that they're 9 and they're on point, caution, okay? Now I know some are going to argue. There are those few outliers. So if we're looking at a graph, of course, there's going to be a few that actually are super strong. They've got the neuromuscular control. They've been dancing, you know, since they were 3, and they have it. That dancer, even though they're 9 and they're started, what I would encourage for you is that you regularly assess them, because that dancer is going to grow. So their neuromuscular control is going to change. So their teacher should be reassessing them regularly to make sure that they, even despite growth, that they still have that control. Okay, so number one, not before age of 12. Number two, if the student is not anatomically sound. So how do we know that? So number one, do they have enough range of motion? Do they have poor lower extremity alignment? So, you know, you're just basically looking at their overall alignment like we would do a normal ortho exam. If the student's not in a pre-professional program, they actually discourage this. So, you know, if they really aren't hopeful, or they have no desire to do it professionally, and they're just kind of taking class just to take class, maybe they should not consider pointe, because there's a lot of injuries that they could have, and there's a lot to dance that they would love, and there's so many other things. So maybe they shouldn't do it. The amount of classes they're taking per week is indicative too. So the dancer that only has 1 ballet class per week, it's not enough. They need to have more than that. So if they're only taking one ballet class a week, and they're taking some other genres of dance, that's wonderful, but that's not enough to prepare that dancer for pointe. And if they're, again, hypermobile, so that was the criteria. So if you see that dancer that's hypermobile, caution, right? So you want to make sure they're strong enough. So hopefully that gave you some guidelines. Now here's what I would encourage all of you to apply. So this information, yes, that's useful criteria for helping to determine if they're ready for pointe. This is also wonderful for any dancer that's had a lower extremity injury. When you can apply some of these tests to think about, what are some good functional tasks and skills that I could do after an ankle sprain, and know, is the dancer ready to get back to classwork? Easy test, calf endurance. Have them turn, have them do a sotae, have them do basically a pointe. Do they have that control? So it's not just for pointe, it's for, are they ready to get back to class? So great criteria: ankle sprain, any kind of foot, knee, anything, any kind of injury. So hopefully that was helpful. Thank you for listening, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.